once went to consult one of the great founders of modern psychotherapy, Carl Jung. She was suffering from severe neurotic symptoms from which none of the doctors she had so far consulted had been able to set her free. After talking to her for a while, with his marvelous gift of intuition, Jung unexpectedly asked her, "So, tell me about your grandfather." The woman began to weep as she recalled memories of her grandfather, long dead, who had been a Jewish rabbi. The prayers he had taught her, the chanting and the rituals in the synagogue, which she'd long since given up attending, even on Jewish high days and holidays. At the end of the interview, Jung gently but firmly said to her, "Well, I can tell you one thing for certain. If you could find some way of regaining your religious faith, you will get better. But if you can't, you won't." Later, Jung wrote that he had come to see that woman as a kind of symbol of the society we all live in today. Our grandfathers, or at least their own grandfathers, not only believed in the truth of the Christian faith, but drew life from its symbols and rituals. Think of the countless baptisms, marriages, funerals, and other highly significant moments on life's journey that have been celebrated, for example, in this church over the last 150 years. But wonderful as it is for all of us to be here together on this Christmas night, and let's indeed enjoy it, we have to face the fact that for the majority of people in our country, they no longer find those beliefs, symbols, and rituals a source of life, at least on a regular basis. I'm not thinking of those in our country who practice a different religion, such as Islam and Hinduism, but of the great majority of people who have no specific faith, who might perhaps describe themselves as spiritual, but not religious. Which usually means they're reduced to scraping together material for their own spiritual life from wherever they can find it. Like people scavenging for food on the streets, right outside a restaurant full of fine food for which they have lost the taste. And that can lead to a terrible emptiness and stress. When as a society we do not have symbols and rituals to put us in touch with God, with the ultimate meaning of our life, we become like that woman who went to see Jung, torn apart, uncertain of who we really are, and stressed. Look sometime at the faces in the streets of our cities as you pass them. As someone has said, so many of them appear to be fighting to survive in a perpetual battle against time, fragmented and hyperactive. And yet Christmas is perhaps the one time for many people when the symbols of our ancient faith do make at least some sense. We all love to watch the children acting the part of Mary and Joseph, the shepherds and the wise men. We love to sing the familiar Christmas carols. We love to send each other gifts in recognition of the greatest gift of all, God's coming to earth as a baby, laid in a manger, because there was no room at the inn. John Betjeman, the English poet, in his marvellous poem on Christmas, sums up the yearning that lies hidden for most of the year in so many people's hearts. He writes, "And is it true, this most tremendous tale of all, seen in a stained glass window's view, a baby in an ox's stall, the maker of the stars and sea, become a child on earth for me. Is it true? It's a beautiful symbol, he seems to be saying, speaking of a new life, hope in the midst of desolation, light in the darkness, possibility of peace on earth amid all our strife. But is it actually true? Did it really happen? And if so, how do I find its meaning for me in the highly confusing world of today? When Jung spoke to that Jewish woman about recovering her faith in order to recover her peace of mind, he didn't mean that she could go back somehow to the faith of her childhood. We can never go back except in our memory. We can only go forward to something new and better. And in that, a very important part is played by our imagination. As another poet, T.S. Eliot, said, the trouble of the modern age is not merely the inability to believe certain truths about God, which our forefathers believed, but the inability to feel towards God and man as they did. Or to quote Cardinal Newman, writing in a similar vein, the heart is commonly reached not through the reason, but through the imagination. Consider for a moment all the characters who took part in the Christmas story. What did they actually see? For many people, Mary, Joseph, and the baby were just another family clogging up the streets of Bethlehem, making life more difficult. For King Herod, the baby was a threat to his power. But for other people, somehow glimpsed in the baby a symbol of hope and new life. The shepherds and the wise men worshipped him, even though they could have had no very clear ideas as to who he was, or why they suddenly found themselves on their knees before him. And what about us? What do we see when we look at the scene of the crib, whether here in church or perhaps in our own homes? It's not necessarily a question of understanding him, or seeing all the answers he may have to the complicated questions our age throws up, we ourselves have about life. But can our hearts somehow see him as new life in the midst of corruption, as light in the darkness? It's no accident, of course, that we celebrate the birth of Christ, the darkest time of the year, just as the days begin to lengthen, though it will be some time before we notice it. Some people think that the Church simply took over a pagan Roman feast of the sun and Christianized it. But in fact, historical research shows it may well be the other way round. Whatever date Christ was actually born on, by a good instinct, the Church began to celebrate it at the darkest time of the year. And the pagans, jealous of the popularity of this new religion, made up a feast of their own, rather as the communists did in Soviet Russia to distract people from the church's holy days. I don't know if people still do jigsaw puzzles at home. When I was a child, it was one of our favourite ways of filling the dark winter evenings. No doubt in this computer age they've lost their popularity. Which is a pity, because solving a jigsaw puzzle is a very good symbol of how our faith comes to birth and grows. We piece together the puzzle, unclear as to what the picture is, unless, of course, we've cheated by looking at the box to see what it should look like. Well, the creed that we shall sing in a minute is a bit like the picture on the box. But the real joy is actually putting the pieces together for yourself till that magic moment. And you see for yourself.